What's good, YouTube? It's Adam from Island Music Mobile. Welcome to a brand new video. Today we're going to go ahead and break down a classic, Good Life by Kanye West and T-Pain. The tempo for this one is 85 beats per minute, and the track is produced by Kanye West, Mike D, and DJ Toomp. This one we're going to go ahead and break down the session track by track, section by section, because there is actually a lot of elements to it. I didn't originally remember that it had so much to this song, but there is. So let's start off with the intro bit, and then we'll go from there. All right, so kicking things off, we have the bells. For that sound, I'm using a stock sound in Logic Pro. The preset can be found in Logic's Alchemy called 80s Analog Bells. And then of course, a little bit of EQ and reverb just to tone shape it. So we got our EQ and our reverb here. So without our EQ and reverb, it sounds like this, dry. EQ, makes it a little bit more narrow, and the reverb just puts it in a space. Then next up we have like the main sound that we hear throughout the entire track. I had to layer a couple sounds to get the same tone as the original one. So as you can see, there are several tracks here. We'll start off with the first one here. It's like this brassy synth, all playing the same pattern for the most part. And then if we jump to the end here, it becomes this giant chord. All right, for that sound, we're using a stock Logic sound. If I go over to my library browser, the sound is called, whoa, here it is right here, 80s Synth Brass. You can find it under synthesizer, the brass category. Then layered with that, we have this sound here. It's playing the same preset and the same pattern as the other sound, except on this one, there's a little bit less unison on the sound just to pull it out a little bit more. So see how it's more a little mid-rangey? This one has a little bit more unison on it. So that sound is really just to accent the other one, just to give it the tone that we need. And then layered with that, we have a bass synth over here, sort of filling out the low frequencies. For that sound, I'm actually using a preset from my Moog preset kit. The sound is called the Drake Moog Bass. It's essentially just a Moog bass. I've designed that one in Logic's ES2. These are the settings right over here. And just some EQ to take out some of the top end, or also it sound like this. All right, and then layered with that sound, we have some brass. And for that sound, we're using a stock brass sound in Logic Pro. So if we go to Studio Horns, 7-piece section, we're using the Mississippi Joint preset. Layered with that, we have the live funk horns right here, just to give it like a staccato horn set and together. For the sound, we are using Logic's live horns preset. You can find it under Legacy, Logic, Pop Horns, Live Funk Horns. And then we have the piano layered underneath all of that, acting as like a bass line to it as well. So for that, we are using a stock sound in Logic Pro, using the Studio Grand preset found under the piano category. And all together, it sounds like this. Let's just take out the main melody here. All right, then we get to the second half of the intro, and we'll focus in on this sound right over here. So we get these three elements. So basically we get two saw leads. We'll start off with this one here. Let's just bring this back to there. For that sound, we are using Logic's Retro Synth, basically the default setting that loads up with the cutoff fully open. That's the pattern. Then we have that layered with a really detuned saw sound. For that sound, we are using a preset in Logic's ES2. It's actually found under the tutorial settings. If you go to tutorial settings, go to analog saw unison, it gives you a nice fat saw. And just layered with that, it gives you that. And then we have this brassy saw bass here at the end. And that is layered with the horns over here. Same pattern. For the brassy synth bass sound, we are using the same preset that we did before, the 80s Synth Brass. And for the live studio horns, we are using a preset. You can find it under Studio Horns, Single Instruments, the Studio Trumpet 1. And then all together, it sounds like this. And then of course, we have that main lead line that we hear throughout the entire track. For that sound, we are using Logic's ES2 synthesizer. Once again, we are using that analog saw unison preset found under the tutorial settings with just a little bit of EQ for some tone shaping. Really all I did here was just boost the highs a little bit, just very ever so slightly, and cut the lows just to give it a little bit more brighter sound. Very slight. All together. Alright, so now we are into like the main beat of the entire track. So what we got here is just to make the brass sound a little bit fuller and more synthesized sound, we bring in these two sounds here. So for this first one over here, it's playing the same pattern once again. Let me take this out here. We're using a preset in Logic's Retro Synth. It's basically the default one that loads up once again with the cutoff fully open. And we have a little bit ensemble on the track just to make it a little bit more creamier, if you will. So see how it softens that sound? And then we have this top line. I needed like some sort of high note in there that we were missing. So this is what this is for here. And for that, I'm also using Logic's Retro Synth, the same sound, just shaped a little bit differently. Then we get this pad synth that happens at the end of the section. This is the chord right over here. For that sound, we're using Logic's Alchemy. We're using the vintage saw pad on the pad performance with a little bit of EQ just to take out some of the top end. And that just highlights like this little break point in this section. Then of course we have the sample, the iconic sample that was used in this song. It's Michael Jackson's P.Y.T, Pretty Young Thing. And I'll show you what the original sample sounded like. So here is the original one. Now this is slowed down to 85 beats per minute. The original track, it is a faster, I think it's like 127 beats per minute, the actual song. The song's tempo, actually let me tell you what the actual one was. Yeah, so the real one is about 127 beats per minute. And the section that was sampled can be found near the end of the track. So it's going to sound a little slower here because of the tempo change. So it's this section right over here that was played. All right, so that piece was cut out. And then there was one chop in there that you need to do. So let's just mute this out and hide it out. We have this. Let's solo this out here. For the sample, you pretty much take that full 4-bar loop that I just showed you, and you pretty much play it straight minus this section right here is taken out. And let me just solo it out so you hear what's taken out here. So that P.Y.T is taken out. And this little blip vocal sound here, that was very popular in that era. So that sound right there. You just go ahead and chop it up and repeat it 3 times so that it fills up this section here. Let's bring this back. And then the sample is pitched down 1 semitone, as you can see right here, -1. Otherwise, it would sound like this. Just down 1 semitone and you're good to go. All right, and all together. Then we got the drums. All right, so to start off, we have the kick. We have the hi-hat. Then we have a crash at the top of the bar. Just happens once every 4 bars. And then we have the snare. That entire section pretty much just loops itself for a couple more times. Things come in and out, and then we get this breakdown section here. All right, so let's start off with that electro bass. For that sound, I'm using Logic's Alchemy. And the preset is 80s electro bass. These are the settings right here, with just a little bit of EQ for tone shaping. And then we have this synth sound here. We got 2 of them. Playing the same pattern. So this pad right here is the Super Saw Inferno preset in Logic's Alchemy. And for the second pad, just to fill it out a little bit more, it's Logic's Vintage Saw Pad preset in Logic's Alchemy. And then we get one of my favorite parts of the track is this violin section. All right, so for this violin over here, we're actually using the same violin on this track and this track. So we got Logic's, you can find under Orchestral Strings Violins 2, and this one is the same one. And for this last sound here that you heard underneath, it's like this bass synth sound. I designed that from scratch using Logic's ESP synthesizer. I started off with the classic octave bass preset and just adjusted from there with some EQ for some tone shaping. And then we have like another synth bass that happens underneath it all. For that sound, I'm using Logic's Alchemy, and the preset is called Ultra Wide Saw Bass. These are the settings here. Once again, some EQ for tone shaping. Just took out some of the high end here. And altogether, it sounds like this. everything pretty much repeats itself from there until we get to this breakdown section right here. Everything drops out. So we have this super saw that I showed you previously. It's the same sound, just a different pattern. We'll build up this section here. We have the same bass synth. Layering that up. We have the same Mississippi joint horn section. The live horns. Then we have a piano. So for this piano, I actually went ahead and put in a secondary piano because I need like a little different shape to it. So for this sound, I'm using Logic's Yamaha Grand Piano found under Piano Legacy Pianos. I just layered that with the Studio Grand Piano that I used previously. It just kind of gives the top end that we needed. It's subtle, but we needed it for this section. And of course the drums. We come back into that chorus section. Then we go into like another bridge before the outro. We get those bells once again. So we get those bells. We get the same brass synth. The Mississippi joint horns. The bass. The drums. And then all that crazy synth stuff. So that's that section. And then we go into the outro. And it's pretty much just a copy of this section here and this section here. Except we get this sort of weird, strange effect that I'm almost positive Mike Dean added. I couldn't get it exact. And I feel like if I had a little bit more time with it, I probably could get it closer to it. But I'll show you how I think it was done. So I started off with this sound right here. All right, nothing special, it's just a saw wave in Logic's ES2 synthesizer. This is what I worked with here. And then the magic here is the flanger. So watch once I turn this on. You kind of get like this moving thing happening. And then I bounced it in place and just added some EQ to tone shape it. It sort of gives you the idea of the effect that was used in the track, but it's not quite. This is the original one right here, sampled from the original track. Right, there's a little bit more movement to the sound. And I know it's something to do with the flanger and probably some chorus. And again, if I had a little bit more time with this, I'd probably want to get it more closer to the original. But just to keep things moving quickly, I just sampled the original effect in there. But yeah, just want to point that out. So this is what it sounds like all together at the outro. So that is a quick breakdown of Good Life by Kanye West featuring T-Pain. Let's go ahead and take a listen to everything together, starting from the top. live featuring T-Pain, remade in Logic Pro. For your Logic Pro users out there, I'm gonna go ahead and save this entire session for you, place it as a downloadable link below this video. If you don't use Logic, I got your back as well. I'm gonna export all the MIDI stems, audio stems, and of course include the drum kit that you heard in this remake. You can find that entire playback down below the like button as well. If you have any questions on this or just want to chat or have any suggestions for future videos, let's go chat down below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Later. Peace.